Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and this past week we had a bunch of different updates. Not just iOS updates, but there's a lot to talk about, as well as Apple's AR/VR headset, iPhone 15, as well as when to expect iOS 16.2, weekly Apple deals, and much more. This is your weekly Apple news update for the week of December 4th, 2022. Now, I've also thought about making this into a podcast version, and I wanted to get your take on that before I did that. I had a podcast on Apple Podcasts for quite some time, but I haven't posted to it since 2011. And if it's something you'd like to have me post back on there, maybe with this news update in audio form, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Also, we could have guests or maybe just do a different podcast altogether, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. Apple Card is planning to get some updates soon with the savings account feature and payment options. The Apple Card savings account was supposed to launch with iOS 16.1. It was actually in the notes, but Apple delayed it the same day as the iOS 16.1 public release. Recent Apple Card customer agreement updates now include the savings account feature, and we can expect that as well as the update for the payment options very soon, as it seems like that's in iOS 16.2. So we could see those features either roll out being pushed directly by Apple to the current version, or maybe in that future update. And if you've been thinking of getting an Apple Card, when you currently sign up for it, Apple's giving up to 5% cash back on purchases through Apple. This is something that you don't get apparently if you're a current customer, but if you sign up and then purchase between now and December 25th on Christmas, you'll be able to actually get 5% back. So they still will give you that 3% back on purchases through Apple, but for new customers, they're bumping that up a little bit more. And also, if you have a car key in your Apple Wallet, I currently don't have that option since I don't have a car that supports it. If you have that and you have a BMW, Hyundai, or Kia that supports it, you can now share it with Google Pixel users. So that's something that's in the latest update with Google Pixel and iPhone. So something that they're actually working on together. Something Apple continues to not work on together with Google, though, is this past week, Google again condemned Apple in a blog post not supporting RCS messaging. SMS and MMS have been around for quite a while, but the latest RCS standard messaging could be a little bit more secure and more feature-rich, not just for iOS, but Google users as well. Google continues to urge and condemn Apple for not implementing it. So implementing RCS would not change iMessage at all. It would just bring additional features to those using RCS. So maybe if you don't have iMessage available or you're messaging someone on an Android phone, they just have a more feature-rich experience. I think they should implement this more for the encryption updates and features, but what do you think? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max continue to see delays due to different shutdowns in China with lockdowns, and in a recent article by the Wall Street Journal, Apple has recently accelerated plans to expand production outside of China. It means mostly moving production to India and Vietnam, where Apple already assembles products such as the HomePod, and apparently the current Foxconn factory in China producing iPhones may not resume full production until late December or early January. That means there's a delay everywhere for the 14 Pro and Pro Max still. So if we go to the Apple Store app, you can see here, as it refreshes, I actually added one to my cart just to see what the delay is, and currently if I order it right now, the 256 Deep Purple variant, I would get it on December 28th, hopefully. It's unavailable for store pickup. Some people are able to get this at a local carrier store, but it seems like it's delayed everywhere and continues to be pushed back at least a couple weeks. So if you're able to get one, I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, unfortunately, if you order one today, it seems like it's going to be pushed back a while. Also, to go along with production, TSMC's Arizona plant is still in the works and should be in full production making chips for Apple by 2024. While they're finishing one of their factories, they're building another one, and 4nm chip production for Apple Silicon seems to be making its way to production in the United States, hopefully maybe as soon as 2023, with that full production in 2024. So it's great to see them move things around. Hopefully that will save some of the supply constraints and fix some of those problems. Now, if you're someone that has an iPhone 14, 14 Plus, 14 Pro, or Pro Max with emergency SOS, it helped save someone in Alaska for the first time ever recorded. Now, hopefully it saved many more people if they needed it, but a snowmobiler was able to reach out for help using satellites where no signal was available. So if you actually have that feature, If you go into Emergency SOS, you can try it out. I showed it in a separate demo. And if you don't have signal here, you can actually use satellite connectivity. Now, this will trigger if maybe you're in a subway and you don't have any connectivity to cell towers or Wi-Fi, but that doesn't mean you can use it. You do need to be typically within sight of the sky. So that's something that can help a lot of people. And to go along with that, the recent crash detection that's also built in with call after severe crash is now being triggered by skiers accidentally. Now, it was currently being triggered by roller coaster riders where it would go off for some people, and Apple apparently has fixed some of this with iOS 16.1.2, where they optimized some of the crash detection algorithm. However, we don't know if they had that update installed that was causing skiers to get the same sort of trigger mechanism. So we'll have to see if that's something that's been fixed, but I would love to see it maybe be updated and ask a couple extra questions before it triggers. So that's something hopefully we'll see in the future in different updates. But either way, it looks like it's actually working, but it may be a little bit too sensitive in certain situations. Now, I wanted to share with you a website that I thought was great. You can easily search an Apple event using a keyword with this website. It's something I hadn't seen before with addcontext.xyz. And so if you wanted to search for iPhone 4, it will not only tell you what event it was at, but also highlight the words where they talk about iPhone 4 and also tell you at what point in the video that they actually talk about it. I thought this was something that was really great. And if we wanted to search for something else, maybe A16 Bionic. Let's see where they actually said that here. So we'll hit search. You'll see it works right away. And at 1 hour and 16 minutes on the most recent update of the keynote from September 7th, they talked about it there. They also talked about it in another section. So you can see that here. It's pretty amazing. You can search for anything else. We could search for A12 if you want and hit search. It will find that in a keynote. And you'll see here October event 2018 and where they talked about that. So it's pretty incredible that it's actually searching all that information, and something that's really great for research if you're trying to figure out when Apple released something. Now, I've long been using password managers outside of just Apple's keychain. The reason is I can use it across different devices, different operating systems, and it stores a lot of great information securely. And recently, LastPass was hacked this past week for the second time this year. In a statement, they actually said we recently detected unusual activity within a third-party cloud storage service, which is currently shared by both LastPass and its affiliate GoTo. We immediately launched an investigation, engaged Mandiant, a leading security firm, and alerted law enforcement. We have determined that an unauthorized party using information obtained in the August 2022 event was able to gain access to certain elements of our customers' information. Our customers' passwords remain safely encrypted due to LastPass' zero-knowledge architecture. And so it's great no one got the passwords, but they may have gotten some of your information if you use LastPass, so I just wanted to make you aware. Currently, I use 1Password for just about everything, so I use it all the time for all of my different passwords, and also along with Keychain and more. And they've recently updated their services to help you sign in by remembering which type of login you used, whether that be through Google, Facebook, Apple, or other services. So maybe you logged in and you don't remember what you used, you'll be able to see that now. And again, this is something I use. They're not a sponsor, but if you want to try it out, I'll leave an affiliate link in the description that will give you a free trial and discount on 1Password if you'd like to try it out. And speaking of different discounts, AirPods Pro 2 continually seem to be on discount for $199 on Amazon, sold directly by Apple. So be sure to check out these deals if you've been looking for that. Also, MacBook Pro 14-inch is up to $500 off for the 1TB model. So if you're looking to get a new MacBook and you don't care about the M2 Max or anything else that we should see very soon, that's where I would probably go and purchase one. They're still super fast. It's what I use many times for editing. The M1 Max MacBook Pro 14-inch and up to $500 off is a great deal. Now, if you were having issues with Apple's Mail last week, you're not alone. Last Thursday and Friday, they had an outage that affected some users' ability to access mail. Apple resolved it on Friday, but wanted to make sure you were aware, since if you were having that issue, as I heard from many of you, it was on Apple's side and it wasn't a problem with iOS. So I just wanted to make you aware. Apple this past week sent out notifications that they'd announced their App Store winners along with a podcast of the year winner. You'll see here's the notification for it that I had on one of my phones. Discover the best apps and games of 2022. If you go to that, wait for it to load on the App Store. It announces the winners and shows the different apps. So iPhone app of the year is Be Real. Apex Legends Mobile is the game of the year. The iPad app of the year is GoodNotes 5. You'll see iPad game of the year, Moncage. I think that's how you say that. And then the family or the Mac app of the year is Mac Family Tree, and all the others you can see here. The same is true with podcasts. If we go into podcasts, go to browse here, wait for it to load, you'll see the podcast show of the year. And you'll see it's Slow Burn, Roe vs. Wade. So that's something that they've marked as podcast of the year, and it's the first time they've given a podcast of the year. You can learn about the show, listen to it if you wanted to, or you can see other podcasts, of course. So create a winning show, the making of, podcast show of the year, and everything else. So it's great that we're seeing different choices here. What influences those, I'm not sure, but it's great that we have some more apps to check out. And if you haven't checked out some of those are great apps. I don't use most of those, but I'm always up for trying some new apps. Last Thursday was World's AIDS Day, and Apple showed off their different Red products where they partner with Red and showed off what they're offering and then how much they've actually donated over the amount of time they've been supporting them. So as you can see, we have different Red cases, different Red phones. I actually wish we had a Red iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max like we did one year with one of their flagships, but you can see the different products and see more information over the past 16 years. And it says since 2006, more than $250 million in Apple-supported grants has been provided. So you can see more information about that here. Fix Apple on Twitter showed off a modified iPhone 14 Pro Max that had been made to have a curved display. I'm not sure who would actually want this. I've used curved display phones. I prefer a flat display, but it's something they tried out, and I thought I'd share it with you and see what you think. So let me know what you think of that in the comments below. Now, if you have a 2013 or 2014 iMac, those are now considered obsolete according to Apple and are no longer supported. And also the Apple Watch Series 2 is no longer going to be supported as much. It's marked as vintage, which means it will probably get security updates as needed or maybe none at all. But either way, it's now marked as vintage according to Apple. So if you have an Apple Watch Series 2, it's now old and you'll probably need something new if you want all of those new features. Now, iOS 16.2 RC is something we've been waiting for. Of course, we had Beta 4 this past week. Release candidate would be next. So RC stands for release candidate, which means it's the final version released to developers and beta testers before they release it to the public to find any last-minute bugs. I would expect that as soon as tomorrow. Based on what we had last year, we had Beta 4 of iOS 15.2 on the previous Thursday, and then on the following Tuesday, they released the release candidate. That's typically what we see. That could change. It could be after this video today or the day after. But either way, we can expect that this week with a final release most likely on the 12th of December. That's what Apple did last year with iOS 15.2. I would expect a similar release schedule this year. That makes a lot of sense. Now, we keep hearing more and more about iPhone 15 as Apple gets ready to finalize components for production, which has to be set up months in advance to start producing enough devices for September. So even though they're kind of delayed with the 14 Pro and Pro Max, they still have to get other things ready for the final production of iPhone 15, which typically happens in about 6 months from now. They'll get millions ready for September. So they have to get that production line built and ready to go with all their different supplies in hand and different suppliers ready to ship them products. And recent information says that the iPhone 15's camera sensor will feature Sony's latest state-of-the-art sensor made specifically for phones, according to Nikkei Asia. Sony has long supplied different sensors to different manufacturers for their cameras, even Apple, and that could be even better than the 48 megapixel camera we have in the current phones. The sensor is said to be able to capture more light and handle exposure and the darker areas a little bit better, and it would help with overall photos, not just night mode, but regular photos as well, and give you a better result than what we have now. Now with the Mac, we got the M2 processor this year, and many thought we'd have the M2 Pro, M2 Max, and M2 Ultra by the end of the year, but it looks like that will be next year. And in a recent leak by Shrimp Ample Pro, someone actually recorded the benchmarks from the upcoming M2 Max processor. So in comparisons with the M1 Max from a Mac Studio, it scored a little bit higher in that test. So 1,853 for single core compared to 1,755 on the previous M1 Max, and then also 13,855 for multi-core compared to 12,333 for multi-core. So it's definitely a little bit faster, but that doesn't tell the whole story. There could be different chipsets on that chipset that help with encoding and much more. So with ProRes encoders built into the M2 chipset, it's much faster at encoding video and compressing that after you've edited your video. We could see similar enhancements with the upcoming chipset as well that Geekbench just can't record. Now, we've been hearing about Apple's AR, VR, or mixed reality headset for quite some time, and we've heard about the OS, and it's been referenced in iOS 16 and other OSs for quite some time, and it's called Reality OS. Now, apparently, that's being changed to XROS or 10ROS. We don't really know, but that's sort of a catch-all for mixed reality, so AR, VR, and anything else. So maybe it will stay XROS. Hopefully, it goes back to Reality OS or something else, but that could just be a placeholder, or that could be the final name. We'll have to wait and see. And that headset was once expected to be in a January event, and it still could be, but apparently the overall shipping of that would be delayed until the second half of the year due to software-related issues, according to Kuo Ming Chi. They're apparently changing something that's taking longer than they need to, or maybe modifying or just correcting some bugs they've had. We don't really know, but it seems like they've actually delayed it a little bit later than we expected. My take on this is that it would make more sense for Apple to introduce it at WWDC, or the Worldwide Developer Conference. That's where they typically show off iOS 17 or the next versions of OS, so macOS 14, watchOS 10, and everything else. It would make more sense to introduce it there, give some time for developers to make apps and games, and then release it in the end of the year. But we don't really know what they're going to do. They've actually scrapped big projects like this last minute as they felt they needed to. So we'll have to wait and see. I don't think they'll do that with this, but we heard about delays for many years with Apple Watch and even the original iPhone. We just hadn't seen it actually show up, and many people thought it wasn't real, and then eventually they introduced it. So I think we'll see the same thing there, and we're waiting for that mixed reality headset that apparently, according to those that have actually seen some of it, is far beyond anything we've seen so far. And so that's everything from this past week's news. Be sure to check out the different deals that I'll link in the description like normal, and that website where you can actually search for different keynotes. All of that will be linked. And let me know if you'd like to see that podcast I talked about earlier, a Zollotech podcast that sort of mirrors this news update. And maybe we'll have some guests and more. Let me know your thoughts of that in the comments below. And of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already, though, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.